In this episode, I am going to show Rakshita an interesting game played between Botvinnik versus Tal in 1961. The main feature of the game is that Tal could not exploit the pawn majority he had on the queen side. We are going to see and the consequences he faced. Rakshu, I am going to show a game now, Botvinnik Tal 1961. Okay, it was played in World Championship. So very important game for both the players. And Tal, as you know, is a very aggressive player. He is known for his risk-taking ability, calculation, sacrifices he makes, and all that stuff. And Botvinnik in this game, he tried an approach where he went for an endgame quite early and then tried to outplay him and not let Tal show his tactical skills. And in this game, it worked out very well. Okay, so let's see the game. Botvinnik is playing white, d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, f3. So this is the Samish variation in King's Indian. Okay, castle, bishop e3, e5. Okay, in this Samish variation, let me just share a few basic things here about the opening. Now, one of the main aims for white is, if possible, to get knight h3, knight f2. Okay, if white is able to play knight h3, knight f2, then he will be very happy to, he will see it as an achievement. Okay, so as black, we should be careful not to allow knight h3, knight f2. So if you play, for example, in this position, let's say if white plays d5 and black plays knight b d7, and then I will get knight h3. When you play knight c5, I will come knight f2. Okay, so why knight h3, knight f2 is important? For a few reasons. One, from f2, the knight will defend the pawn on e4, and later, if white wants, he can play f4. Okay, and then the e4 pawn will be adequately defended. The other thing is, you can it will be well placed to go h4 g4 for a king set attack. The knight will be well placed to support the attack as well. Okay, fine. So here Botvinnik took d5, d5. It's not the most testing move theoretically, but Botvinnik is not trying to test the whether the opening is good or bad, but he is trying to test whether Tal can handle the problems in the resulting endgame. So queen d8, rook d8, knight d5, knight d5, c d5. So what we should do when we play our games, or even when you prepare at home. So my first suggestion, whatever you want to do during the game, okay, you must do it during home preparation. So if you want to concentrate well when you play in a tournament game, you should concentrate well in the class or when you are learning chess at home. And same way, if you want to calculate well in the tournament, you must teach yourself how to calculate well when you are practicing at home. Okay, so whatever you want to replicate in the tournament, do it at home. Because in the home environment, you don't have any pressure of losing. You are not worried about rating. There is no time constraint. You don't have external pressures that can affect your performance. But when you are playing in a tournament, all these factors come into play. We are worried about possible loss of rating, loss of game, and sometimes because of the pressure we are not able to concentrate well. People are walking around us. Okay, sometimes all this can affect our concentration. So the battle should not be too hard, but the training should be too hard, very hard. Okay, so exert yourself as much as possible when you prepare at home. Okay, don't try to keep the preparation very easy and casual. It should be strenuous, not always, but if you are practicing, let's say 4 hours in a day, at least 1 hour of the training should really put a lot of strain on you. Okay, you have to really think, give your best effort to find the moves. That kind of work you need to do every day. Okay, so here let's study the position. White has space advantage. The pawn has gone to 5th rank. Now how do we know when someone has space advantage or not? If we divide the board into half, okay, so the first 4th rank, they belong to white, the other 4 ranks 5 to 8, it belongs to black. Let's assume this way. So we both have equal share of the board, 4 ranks each. Now whichever side's pawn crosses over to the other side, that is the 5th rank, let's say, then that side has more space in that particular area. So here white pawn has gone to d5 to the 5th rank. So in the center, white has more space. It doesn't mean he has more space on the king side or queen side. Only in the center he has more space. Now we have to understand this concept of space better. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a table and that 4 people can sit and eat. Okay, so now 2 people are having dinner at the time. Is it going to put strain on them, the space? No, they have enough space. Now let's say 2 more people join. Now there are 4 people at the table. Now it becomes little constraining, okay, but you still have enough space for 4. Now let's say 4 more people try to join. Now in the space which is there for 4, we are now having 8 people. Now it becomes really constrained, okay. So now similarly, let's imagine a phone booth. Okay, so one person goes inside the phone booth and he speaks. There is no, even though it is little tough, but it is not too difficult. But let's say 3 people tries to get into the phone booth and speak at the same time, it becomes difficult. So from these 2 examples, what we can learn is, it is not the space available that decides whether there is enough space or not, but it is the number of people fighting for that space that decides whether there is enough space or not for everyone. Okay. So now when we look at with that angle on the chessboard, now let's say black's pieces are constrained. We have bishop g7, it's passive because of the e5 pawn. The bishop c8 doesn't have any active squares. They are controlled by the white pawns g2, f3, e4, d5, and knight cannot come to c6. And if you go knight a6, you have to worry about bishop a6 doubling the pawns, the c pawn becoming backward. And you already have c7 pawn backward. And if you play knight d7, then you have to worry about rook c1, how to guard the c pawn. So we have few problems, and most of the problems are related to space. Okay. So on the space, we get into trouble when opponent pawn comes to 5th rank. So my suggestion is, in the early stages of the game, in the opening, whenever your opponent's pawn comes to 5th rank, try to meet it with a pawn break. Only by playing pawn breaks we can fight for space. So that's why if you see openings like French, now e4, e6, d4, d5, e5. So on the 3rd move, white's pawn has come to 5th rank. And what does black do immediately? c5. That's a pawn break, right? And then even if we take like advanced Caro-Kann, e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, some players play c5 immediately. Or they play bishop f5, e6 and follow it up with c5. But the point is the c5 break must happen, and sometimes you have to follow it up with f6 break as well. When the pawn is on e5, you have to meet it with the pawn break with f6. It's apparent in French Tarrasch also, knight d2, knight f6 lines, black often plays the f6 very quickly. Okay, so whenever opponent pawn comes to 5th rank in the opening stage, quickly meet it with pawn break. Now many players, what I have seen is, they delay this pawn break. Okay, now when does one player get more space? When he makes pawn moves, you get more space, right? If I have to get the pawn to the 5th rank, I have to play at least 2 pawn moves, and it probably requires a pawn support as well. Okay, so when in the opening stage, let's say if white gets space, what it also means is, I have not been developing my pieces, but I am just busy making pawn moves. Okay, so when I am making pawn moves, the price I pay is lack of development. I am ignoring development to gain space by pushing pawns. If you are on the other side, you must realize that my opponent is gaining space because he is advancing pawns at the cost of development. So now if you don't challenge him immediately and you play some quiet moves which do not test him too much, then he will simply complete his development. And then what will he will have? He will have completed development and he will have space. Okay, so when you are fighting for space, you must do it before your opponent completes development. Understood? So that is why immediate pawn break is necessary. So now if you play knight d7, knight f8, bishop d7 and then play c6, your opponent would have completed all the development he wants. Okay, so you have to do it much before. So he played c6. Now you understand why he is fighting for space immediately. Now white played bishop c4. Now all white needs to do is to play knight e2, king f2. I don't want to castle because we are already in the endgame. So as close as possible to the center. So knight e2, king f2, rook hd1, rook ac1, something like this, and then play knight c3. Okay, and white will be clearly better. Okay, he will have more space, active pieces, and he has completed his development. So you have to strike quickly. So whenever you are fighting against opponent's space, time is a crucial element. You cannot waste time playing quiet moves. Okay, so he plays b5, bishop b3, bishop b7. So he wants to take cd5 now, triple O. Now he played c5. So here with this move c5, what has happened is white gets a protected pass pawn on d5. Now this is especially good to have in endgame. Okay, if you have a pass pawn itself is good, and if it is protected pass pawn, even better. Okay, and what has black achieved in return for giving this protected pass pawn for white is he has got queenside pawn majority, which is also good to have in endgame. So now it's a challenge between which is better, protected pass pawn in the middle or queenside pawn majority. Okay, now it all boils down to one fact. If black can create serious threats or damage to white using this pawn majority, then his strategy has worked. If he is not able to do that, then the strategy has not worked. Okay, so let's imagine a position hypothetically. Suppose black plays c4 and then knight d7, bishop f8, bishop c5. I exchange the dark color bishop and then I get, let's say, a5, bishop a6, knight b7, knight d6. Okay, just hypothetically imagine I get all this. So I got knight d6, I have exchanged my dark colored bad bishop for your good bishop, blocked with knight d6, and I rolled a5, b5, c4 with bishop a6, and then I follow it up with b4. Okay, and then I have rooks b8, c8, something like this. Then white is hopeless. Okay, he will have a white bishop and with pawns g2, f3, e4, d5, and black squares we lost control. Our d pass pawn is not doing much, effectively blocked by knight d6, and the black's queenside pawn majority is rolling. Okay, so this is the danger that white is facing. Probably this is what something like this Tal is hoping to achieve. Okay, so it's a battle between two ideas. One, can black effectively blockade the d pawn? Okay, that is one challenge. The other challenge is, can he advance his queenside pawn majority? Okay, so if he can do both, then black's strategy has worked. So for white, he should ensure that the pawn on d5 is not effectively blockaded, and if it is blockaded artificially, you have to exploit the weakness. For example, let's say if black plays bishop f8, bishop d6 here, blocks the pawn, and then plays knight d7. Now it looks like he has blocked the pawn, okay, but the price he has paid is the king side dark squares have become weak. So maybe we should play h4, h5 and create an attack against the king. Okay, so this is the kind of battle we are looking ahead. So after c5, now Botvinnik understood that the pawn majority should be stopped. So he played bishop c2 first, knight d7, knight e2, bishop f8, knight c3. So both are playing logical chess. He played bishop c2 so that c4 will not come with tempo. And black is playing knight d7, bishop f8 with the hope that at some point he will be able to play c4, exchange the black colored bishop with bishop c5, and then try to create a blockade on d6 and roll the queenside pawns. Okay. Now black has a choice. He can play a6, the idea to play c4, or he can play b4 immediately and then try to get c4 on the next move. Okay, so what do you think is the best option for black?
I think a6 is the best option for black.
a6 is the best option. Can you explain why?
Yeah, because I thought b4 is more committal.
b4 is more committal, maybe premature, you don't want to commit that move now. Maybe you want to play c4, a6, b5, c4 will be a better pawn structure, or having c5, b4 is better pawn structure, you are not sure. So you don't want to commit your pawn structure too early, so you want to play a6. So now you see that there are many situations when we are either playing a game in a tournament or when we are seeing chess at home, we come across situations where we have to take decisions. Okay, and these decisions sometimes they are easy to make, sometimes they are tough to make, these decisions. Okay, now we have to find out which kind of decisions are difficult to make, okay, and which type of decisions are easy to make. If we can understand this, then it will make our job easier. And what we should do in training is we should put ourselves more in the situation where taking a decision is difficult. Okay, so purposefully you find positions, you find games where you have to take some very difficult decisions, and then you try to take those decisions yourself, and then you compare with how in the same situation a stronger player took the decision. Okay, and when we compare our thinking with a stronger player's thinking, the purpose is not to get demotivated, because many times they will think better than us, okay, but to learn from them. Okay, so when we compare how we think and how other great minds are thinking, we can learn a lot. But for that, we have to, that's why I keep trying to tell to my students, we are seeing chess not for better results. Okay, that should come much later. Okay, we are seeing chess to learn, to get better. Okay, so if this is your priority, then you will be very interested in this process of comparing your thought process with how a stronger player thinks in the same position. Now you already said, like, I don't want to play b4 now because it is committing the pawn structure too early. I don't want to do that now. I want to think about which pawn structure I have to have later. So I want to play a6. But sometimes what happens is, sometimes you must commit to something. Okay, and when we delay taking the decision, I will commit later, then we would have missed that chance. And that's what happened in the game, and that's what happens with a6. But we'll come to that little later. Now what happens is, like, whenever you think of a move and it turns out that is not the best move, the move which you rejected turns out to be the correct move. Okay, so in this case b4 is the right move, and a6 which you chose is not the best move, but we'll come to that later, as I said. So now you are in this situation where your choice is not the best move. Now how we should handle it? Okay, I would say this is a fantastic moment for us to learn something very good, which can help us in grow stronger as a chess player. So whenever you make a mistake, immediately you should realize you have got a fantastic opportunity to correct your mistake then and there. You would not have learned that if you had not committed that mistake. Okay, so mistakes are opportunities to learn some valuable lessons and correct ourselves. So let's imagine I give you one child an apple. Okay, he basically asked for money. I don't want to give him money, so I give him an apple and say, you sell this apple and take the money. Now he goes to a market and he sells the apple for $1. Okay, so it's a hypothetical situation, don't get into the details, just try to focus on the message I'm trying to give. So he sells the apple for $1 and he is happy. Now another child comes, he asks for money. Now I don't want to give money, so I give him an apple and say, sell the apple and take the money. So he goes to a market and he sells it for $5. Okay, the apples look same, everything looks same. One child sold it for $1, the other child sold it for $5. Now these two children meet, and one child says, I sold it for $1, you know, I didn't have anything. Now I have an apple, I sold it for $1, I made $1, I'm very happy. But the other child says, yes, I was in a similar situation. I was given an apple, I sold it for $5. Now if you are the child who sold the apple for $1, how you should react. You can get upset, why I couldn't sell the same for $5, or you can feel jealous, I got only one, he got 5, or you can sense an opportunity. If I learn how to sell this apple for $5, okay, then I can apply this learning in different situation and benefit, right? So that skill I want to learn. You have to look at it that way in a long-term perspective. So you should ask that child how you could sell the same apple for $5. Teach me. Now once he says, okay, this is what I did, now you can do the same with other stuff. Okay. So the same way, when you come up with a move, a strong player plays a different move. Now you should immediately ask, you have an option to ask 2 questions. One, you can ask, what is wrong with my move? So if the child says, what is wrong with selling an apple for $1? Nothing wrong. Okay, it's a free apple. Even if you sell it for 5 cents, you still have gained, right? So instead of asking what is wrong with selling for $1, you will gain more if you ask how I can sell it for $5, right? So when you make a move, when you choose a move which is different from what a strong player offers, then you can ask what is wrong with my move. But this way you won't learn much, because you are focusing on something negative. Instead, if you can ask why his move is better than me, okay, or what is good about the move he played. Now you are trying to look at the position from a different perspective, different angle, and in this process you will learn more. So whenever your move turns out to be not the best move, instead of asking what is wrong with my move, that is also important, but don't focus too much on that. You must ask about how I can start thinking like this strong player did. Okay, that way you will learn more. Okay, so in the game he played a6, tall played a6, but b4 would be better. b4, knight a4, c4, or b4, knight a4, bishop a6, idea c4. Okay, but he played a6. Now what should white do here?
B3.
Very good, b3. Now what has happened is, after b3, he is not able to advance his pawn majority. Now if you play b4, you can go knight a4, idea knight b2, bishop d3. You can create a blockade on the white squares and then move the king b1, rook c1, rook c2, rook c1. You can start creating pressure against the c pawn. Okay, so basically black has already missed the boat. Okay, he missed his chance where he could have pushed his pawns, but he hesitated just one move, and then he lost that opportunity. So from this example, you have to learn that when sometimes, this is the problem with chess thinking, but I would say problem is probably not the best word. I would say this is the most interesting thing about chess. We are always presented with choices. You can take this route or you can take the other route. Okay, and whatever decision you take, you have to face the consequence. And many times when we are taking this decision, we simply don't know whether our decision is the right decision or not. Okay, so what happens usually is, when people realize this, I have to choose either A or B, they immediately panic. What if I choose the wrong thing, right? What if my choice turns out to be a mistake? Now, if you take this approach, then you will forever be like afraid to take decisions. Okay, you have to first realize I must take decisions, and the decisions I take, the consequences I must face. So that should make you responsible, not scared to take decisions. Okay, so you have to take responsible decision. I take decision. If it did not work out, it's my problem. I can handle it. Okay, so whenever things go wrong, instead of blaming yourself for things going wrong, you should say, okay, I took this decision, it turned out to be wrong, I accept responsibility. If there is some punishment, like in chess, the punishment is you lose the game. Okay, you just face it bravely. Yes, I made some mistakes, I lost the game. So I remember this incident where Anand had to play the World Championship match against Topalov, and when he was at Frankfurt airport about to leave to Bulgaria, so he found that there was a volcanic eruption in Iceland, and because of that there was ash in the whole sky and none of the flights were able to take off, and he had to reach Bulgaria. So then he had to travel by road. I think, I'm not sure, probably 50 plus hours He had to travel continuously with his team. He was extremely tired. And then the first round he lost. And he lost very badly. And I remember when I was watching the game, I was in your house. Me and your father Ravi, we both were watching that game. And what happened, Anand lost probably 23 moves, something like that. Very quick loss. And in the press conference, people were asking him, did you lose because of the tiresome journey? Or you did not get enough rest? So do you blame that for your loss? He said, no, I have nothing or no one to blame. I just did not play correct chess. I lost. And from tomorrow, I will play better chess and hope things will be better. Okay, so this is very important lesson. I was shocked. It was kind of a slap on my face because I was trying to come up with different excuses why Anand would have lost. But here is the guy who lost and he doesn't want to give excuse. He simply accepted, I played bad chess, I made some mistakes, I lost. And what is shameful in that? Okay, because if you are not ready to accept your mistakes, there's no way we can learn from those mistakes. So the first thing is, yes, I did something wrong which I should not have done. And then you try to find out how I can avoid such mistakes in similar situations, because similar situations are going to come. Okay, and if we react the same way, then we are going to repeat the same mistakes and we'll still be blaming others or the situations. Okay, so and then what he did after the loss, he went to gym and he did some workout and then he told himself that good thing I lost in the first round. Imagine if I had lost the final round. I won't have any chance to come back. So I still have 11 rounds remaining and I will make a comeback. So basically when these strong players go through difficult situations, they don't doubt themselves. Okay, they back themselves fully. Okay, and this is an important lesson you must learn when you are young. So when things go tough, first thing you have to accept, things will get tough. So you should not plan for situations where things will get easier all the time. Okay, so you should be ready to face tough situations, expecting them fully. Okay, so he went to the room where the seconds were all very upset because he has just lost his game, and he said, come on guys, we are going to win tomorrow. So when the player who has lost, who is supposed to be down in confidence, he comes to the room and says, we are going to win tomorrow, and everyone became energized. Okay, and that is the role of champions. When things go tough, you still back yourself completely. Okay, you don't doubt your abilities, because if you don't believe in yourself, who else will? I mean, why should others believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? Okay, so this is very important. Even if the parents or coaches make it clear to the child, either directly or indirectly, that I don't believe in your capabilities, then that can have a devastating impact on the child's confidence. Okay, so B3, and now he is not able to make use of his pawns. So let's see the remaining moves quickly. Rook A8. So now he wants to play C4, if BC4, Rook C4. So prophylactic move BD3. So you don't prevent C4, but you are preventing Rook C4. Okay, Knight B6. Now with this move, okay, maybe he's threatening C4, but Bishop B6 he has to consider. Bishop E2, prophylactic, because now he cannot play C4, the bishop will not be under attack. Rook D6. So this is not the Bliss blockade, but you can understand why he is playing Rook D6, not Bishop D6. He wants to defend the Knight B6, so he wants to play C4. King B2. Now we played F5. So with King B2, he wants to come Rook C1, and either Rook HD1, or I would personally prefer Rook C2, Rook C1. Okay, a lot of pressure on the C file. Rook C1, Rook F6. So you see, do you think the idea of A6 is to play F5, Rook D6, Rook F6? No. We wanted to play on the queen side, right? But with timely B3, BD3, BE2, we have stopped him from using his pawn majority, forcing him to go for all this kind of stuff. This was not his intention at all, but he has already realized that I missed my boat. Okay, now it's instructive how Botvinnik punishes this mistake. He himself plays on the side where he has less pawn majority. He has 2 versus 3 on the queen side, but he plays A4. Now if you play B4, it's a positional suicide. You will just play Knight B1, Knight D2. So he took ba4, ba4. Now I already said that in endgame, king is the best blockader. Okay, so if white has to move the king, would you go king a2 or king c2?
King c2.
Easy, right? If you know the principle, it's quite easy. So a5, but it just weakens the b5 square, king c2. Now you have blocked the pawn with the king. The file b file is open for your rooks. That's pure fun for white from here. c4, rook b1, bishop b4. So it looks like he has blocked the file, but it's a temporary blockade. Knight a2. Cannot maintain the blockade. Bishop c5 forced. Bishop c5, rook c5, knight c3. So here we have to realize, like, even though the white pawns g2, f3, e4, d5 are fixed in white squares and we have a white bishop, white is still better because black is not able to exploit the dark squares effectively. If the knight b6 can come to d4 and the rook comes to f2, it's a completely different story. But if he takes fe4, he will lose to knight e4. So he cannot open the f file, benefit from the f file. The knight is not going to come to d4 at all. And the bishop b7 is a pinned piece. Knight b6, b7. So we are just going to double on the b file. Bishop c8, rook b2, bishop d7. Now it's easy to play moves like rook a1 if you have a defensive mindset, but if you hate defense, you should not even be considering such moves. Rook hb1, bishop a4, knight a4, knight a4, rook b8 check. So white understands that eventually the a5 and c4 pawns will be lost, okay, and then the d pawn will win the game. King g7, rook 1 b7 check, rook f7. Now there is a very small important principle. Whenever you are playing an endgame and you are playing for a win, it makes sense to exchange one rook and keep the other rook alive. If we keep both the rook, suddenly he will sacrifice a pawn and create an attack against our king. So d6. So now you see the difference in the value of the pass pawns. The a pawn and c pawn, they are pass pawns, but they are effectively blocked. The same cannot be said for the d pawn. Rook b7, king f6, rook h7. So basically white wants to play d7, but it wants to do that without allowing king to e7. So rook c8, d7, rook d8, bishop c4. And the a pawn is useless, the king will handle it, or even the bishop will handle. And now you can even play h4 idea, rook f7 mate. The king is not safe, the rook d8 is passive, your pass pawn is more dangerous. So here in this game, white was able to make use of his pass pawn, the d pawn eventually, but what looked like a queen-side majority, it came to nothing. Black could not effectively make use of it because of the important decision he had to take was either to play b4 or a6. He chose the wrong move. Okay, so you also chose a6, but you are an upcoming player. Tal was already a world champion and he still made a wrong choice. Okay, so from this we have to learn that even very strong players, world champions, they make mistakes. So if as upcoming players, if we make mistake, we should not focus too much on our mistakes. Build up on your strength, and once you have adequate strength, you can turn your attention on your weaknesses.